It's a windy morning in the Verde Valley in Arizona, and I'm at one of my favorite airports, Sedona, which sits comfortably atop a mountain. We're in the Cessna 172, runway 3, ready for departure. We need to take note, we've got a 90-degree crosswind at 15 knots, so we need to take care. Welcome to the SimHanger, my name's Mark, thank you very much for watching, and let's get started. In today's video, our focus is very much on rudders and the important role they play in controlling your aircraft, and never more so than when you've got some fairly windy conditions to contend with, especially during takeoff and landings. If you're a flight simming enthusiast, not only do you need rudder pedals to take you that one step closer to realism, but selecting the peripheral that will meet your individual needs is equally important. In this video, I'll share with you the rudder pedals that I rate highly, and more specifically, we'll be testing out WinWings Orion 2 rudder pedals. Winds blowing from 120 degrees at 15 knots, time to get ready for departure. Parking brake off and aileron full into the wind. By pushing the throttle forward, we're starting to move. I'll use my rudders to steer to stay on the center line. My aileron is full down on the right hand side to compensate to some degree for the additional lift created due to the wind direction on the right wing. For a crosswind takeoff, aileron always into the wind. As we gain speed and judging it more by feel, I'm easing up on the aileron, but using very small adjustments on the rudder pedals, dancing slightly to maintain my centerline position. And it's here that a good set of rudder pedals pay for themselves, by having enough resolution in their movement to allow for minor adjustment. Take my feet off the rudder pedals and we can see the aircraft crabbing into the wind. I think rudder pedals are perhaps one of the most underrated peripherals. The rudder pedals I'm currently using from WinWing have a dampener on to create a force and tension when pressing the rudders. The brakes themselves are spring tensioned, creating a nice pressure feedback for you as you apply brakes. When it comes to landing, well, rudders also play a key role. That is to keep you straight on the center line just before touchdown. Here, using my ailerons, I'm crabbing slightly into the wind again. The wind on this occasion is blowing left to right. By adjusting my ailerons, I can move myself laterally, left or right, to maintain a center line. By crabbing, I mean there's forward momentum as well as some sideward movement. The rudders come into their own just as we flare, straighten the nose for touchdown, and we're down. Now applying brakes so that I can take this taxiway to the right before bringing myself to a stop. If you follow my channel at all for any length of time, you'll be aware that I've reviewed many different types of rudder pedals in the past. As a flight simmer, if you fall into the enthusiast category, well, I personally have a number of favorites. On my DOF H3 motion platform, I rate Thrustmaster's Pendulum or TPR rudder pedals very highly indeed. Good amount of travel in the pedals, giving you high resolution in terms of small adjustments. Brake axes a little weaker than I'd like. On the negative side, they are large and they are relatively expensive. Turtle Beach's rudder pedals are a good mid-range set, but on my next level racing static rig, I've used Whirlpool's Ace rudder pedals. Like the TPRs, these are a high-end set of rudder pedals, providing a high degree of control, but they are relatively wide and so wouldn't fit on the DOF H3 motion platform. And the pedals we're looking at today, the WinWing Orion 2, they also don't suit the DOF H3 motion platform, as once again they're too wide. They are, however, perfectly suitable for fitting under a desk or fitting to your static sim rig. I think it's appropriate at this juncture that we do review another high-end set of rudder pedals, as I believe and I stand to be corrected that Whirlpool's Ace rudder pedals are being discontinued in favour of their new Falcon set. So let's see what WinWing have to offer. To start off, I have two comments to make. Firstly, WinWing supplied the product to the channel at no cost for the purposes of review, but my opinion and views are my own. And secondly, after a few weeks of use, I rate these very highly. And they have replaced the Whirlpool on my next level racing static rig. Let's have a quick look at what you get. Get a set of metal feet. Two versions are available, one with and without a dampener. I recommend with the dampener, makes a big difference. Standard USB connector, along with all the associated nuts, bolts, etc. that you need for assembly. WinWing call this the Orion 2 Metal Rudder Pedal. When they say metal, well, they really mean it. Weighing in at just over 6.5 kgs, with the exception of the front fascia plate, everything else is made out of metal. Has an industrial type look to it, which I quite like. It looks and feels robust and built to last. These were originally called the Skywalker Rudder Pedals, now renamed to the Orion, I guess, for copyright reasons. The rudder pedals themselves use Hall effect sensors with 18 centimeters of travel per pedal, which means you get a high degree of resolution in terms of the movement, which is perfect for those looking for that extra level of accuracy. With everything in the box laid out, there's one thing missing, have you noticed? Yes, it's the instruction manual. You'll need to go on their website and download their manual to get a basic idea of how to assemble. It is fortunately, however, fairly simple and straightforward, and I cover it very briefly a little later on in the video. One very nice feature, particularly if you're also into sim racing, the axes can be locked for brake and accelerator, or for flight sim, simply lift up the lock, turn it to the side, and the axes are now active. The axes use a combination of cams and springs to create the tension that you want. Prices shown here are in US dollars and taken from their global shipping. Local and regional prices may vary. Check their website for details, link in the notes below. Assembly is a fairly quick affair. Initially, fit the feet. They simply bolt on, and they do have rubber pads underneath which holds it fast on a carpet. As you may have noticed earlier, I got the non-slip pad with the unit. This is for placing it on a smoother surface, something like a laminate floor, to prevent slippage. There is also the option to get a metal base plate for the unit. However, it's a little bit odd. Whichever one you get seems to be potluck depending on what they have in its stock at any one time, according to their website. Be much better, in my opinion, if the customer could select the option they preferred at time of ordering. In my case, I didn't fit the feet as I would attach it directly to the main rudder plate on my next level racing rig. It has 4 mounting holes built into the main assembly, which fortunately lined up. The next step in the assembly is simply to attach the pedals to the front of the unit, then secure the connecting rod to the rear of the unit as indicated, and do exactly the same process for the other pedal. And once that's done, well, both pedals are connected, and all that really remains is to fit the dampener. Just don't forget to tighten the front of the pedals, just to eliminate any possible play. And here you get the chance to test out the tension on the brake pedals themselves, which to be honest is probably the best that I've ever experienced, with a subtle dampening effect once the pedals are pushed all the way down. You can also limit the amount of travel of each axis by adjusting this bolt here, if you didn't want maximum movement, depending on how you've assembled it and travel required. Let's now fit the dampener. First of all, place the 2 risers, the long one at the back. Make sure you tighten it all the way down, then fit the front riser. It simply slots into place. Now fit the dampener onto the risers, short screw at the back, long screw at the front, and with the tension adjustment on the dampener uppermost. And once that's done, well, you're good to go. You can adjust the tension or friction on the dampener simply by rotating this dial here. You want to tighten it to a point where you're getting good friction and feedback, but the pedals return to center. And as stated previously, connection is via a USB directly to your computer or powered hub. The angle of the pedals can be adjusted to 3 different positions. I left mine in the center position, ideal for GA. These are, in a nutshell, a very, very good set of rudder pedals. I do prefer them to the Virpil Ace, and to be honest, I was a little bit gutted they wouldn't fit on the DOF H3 motion platform. Overall, I would rate these alongside Thrustmaster's TPR, the negative being the width, the positive being the price, and the better overall feel that this set gives you. In terms of software, there's very little to talk about. It uses their SimApp Pro application. When you initially get the rudder pedals, just check if you need a firmware update. In my case, I didn't. You also have an option to calibrate, but once again, I didn't need to do that. They were perfectly calibrated. Under the Test tab is where you can check that everything is working as expected for all 3 axes, including the brake pedals, left and right, as well as the main rudder axis itself. The front panel and 2 very small side panels do light up. And if it's not to your liking, well, you have the option to turn them down or turn the lighting off completely. In Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, the rudder pedals are recognized. They come up as WinWing Skywalker, but at the time of making this video there's no default configuration, although configuring the 3-axis is fairly straightforward. I left both brake axis linear, but like all rudder pedals, the actual rudder axis itself, I had to turn the sensitivity down to -0.4. I personally rate these rudder pedals and believe they represent fair value for money in the current market. They will, however, only really appeal to the enthusiast who wants the best control that they can get. WinWing are progressively garnering a reputation of providing quality, and I feel the Orion 2 metal rudder pedals are no exception. As always, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found it useful and informative. Stay well, look after yourselves. I'll see you all again very soon, and ciao for now.